Jury convicted her of 13 counts, 4 of murder, 9 of attempted murder, and the judge gave her 13 life sentences.
But she was born to kill.
In 1991, a quiet hospital in Lincolnshire would become the epicenter of a chilling mystery that would reverberate across the world. 13 children collapsed unexpectedly, and 4 of them never woke up. The world would soon come to know a name that sent shivers down the spine: Beverly Allitt, the nurse who would be dubbed the Angel of Death. But the question that haunts us still: was she born to kill? March 1991. In the small market town of Grantham, 5-month-old Paul Crampton was struggling with what seemed to be a simple chest infection. His parents, concerned by his slow recovery, decided to take him to the pediatrics ward at Grantham Hospital, hoping for a quick checkup that would put their minds at ease. Ward 4 was where Paul was admitted. The doctors, erring on the side of caution, decided to keep him overnight. His parents, finally breathing a sigh of relief, believed their son was in good hands. But relief soon gave way to terror. Within hours, Paul's condition took a sudden and alarming turn. Though he responded well to treatment and calmly returned to Ward 4, something sinister lingered in the air. Unanswered questions, unspoken fears. Paul's father, David, couldn't have known that his son's sudden decline was part of a far more disturbing pattern. In the weeks leading up to Paul's hospitalization, Ward 4 had seen more than its share of tragic coincidences. 7-week-old Liam Taylor was the first to die. A mild chest infection had brought him to Ward 4, but within hours of his admission, Liam inexplicably collapsed, succumbing to respiratory failure. 2 weeks later, Ward 4 would face yet another tragedy. 11-year-old Timothy Hardwick, a severely disabled child, was brought in after suffering a severe seizure at school. When he arrived, Timothy's skin had turned a frightening shade of blue, and he was barely clinging to life. The emergency team fought desperately to resuscitate him, but at 6:15 p.m., they had to admit defeat. Timothy was gone. The shadow over Ward 4 deepened just 5 days later. 15-month-old Kaylee D was the next to suffer, enduring not 1 but 2 mysterious respiratory arrests. With no clear answers, the decision was made to transfer Kaylee to the larger Nottingham General Hospital. There, in what seemed like a miracle, she rapidly recovered. Meanwhile, for David and his wife, the nightmare appeared to be coming to an end. Their 5-month-old son, Paul, was on the road to recovery. He had been revived and, for 3 days, seemed happy and content, showing no signs of the terror he had just survived. So much so that doctors began preparing to send him home, believing the worst was behind them. But the unsettling pattern continued to grow clearer. As Paul faced yet another unexplained crisis, the doctors realized they were at a loss. He was quickly placed on another glucose drip and rushed to the Queen's Medical Center, a larger hospital 20 miles away. Like Kaylee, Paul made a swift recovery. In a gesture of concern, or was it something more, a young nurse insisted on accompanying Paul in the ambulance, ensuring he arrived safely in Nottingham. To the outside world, this nurse appeared dedicated and composed, despite the string of tragedies that had unfolded around her. The truth behind Beverly Allitt's calm exterior was far darker than anyone could have imagined. Over 4 harrowing weeks, Ward 4 of Grantham Hospital's pediatric unit had been plunged into crisis. 4 young patients had suffered sudden, unexplained arrests, 2 of which had ended in heartbreaking deaths, and 1 nurse, Beverly Allitt, had been present for every single one. Beverly Allitt was born on October 4, 1968, in the quaint village of Corby Glen, nestled deep in the Lincolnshire countryside. Her early life seemed unremarkable, but a chance meeting during her pre-nursing course would set her on a path that no one could have predicted. While working part-time at a local pub, Allitt became involved with several boyfriends. It was during these relationships that a disturbing side of her personality began to surface: aggression directed at those she was supposed to care for, a chilling foreshadowing of the horrors to come. At the time, no one recognized the signs. Her unusual behavior, however, bore a striking resemblance to the symptoms of a rare medical disorder. But these early red flags went unnoticed, and they certainly didn't hinder her from pursuing a career in healthcare. In September 1988, Allitt was accepted into a training program at Grantham and Kesteven District Hospital, aiming to become a state-enrolled nurse. Almost immediately, strange and unsettling unsettling incidents began occurring in the medical college dormitories where she stayed. Despite mounting suspicion, no one stepped forward as the culprit, leaving the entire student body under threat of expulsion if the bizarre occurrences didn't cease. During this time, Allitt's pattern of deception deepened. She frequently lied about injuries and illnesses, creating a web of fabrications that grew more elaborate by the day. Yet, despite barely scraping through her course, Allitt was determined to specialize further. She set her sights on becoming a children's nurse, a decision that would soon have devastating consequences. The rejection from her desired program was a bitter pill for Beverly Allitt, but she wasn't one to give up easily. She managed to secure a position on Ward 4 of Grantham Hospital, where she could gain the crucial experience she needed. Ward 4 was the pediatrics unit of the small, local Grantham and Kesteven Hospital, a place that had always been a haven of calm, filled with the usual cases of broken bones and minor ailments. It was a cheerful ward, adorned with bright cartoon characters, and despite staff shortages, the nurses took great pride in their work. On February 18, 1991, Beverly Allitt began her 6-month contract as a nurse on Ward 4. It seemed like a stroke of luck. Just as she started, the ward became unexpectedly busy. A series of hyperglycemic attacks among young patients escalated the usual pace, leading to the tragic deaths of 2 children. The more seasoned nurses couldn't recall the ward ever being this chaotic, but no one could have imagined that the source of the chaos was someone within their own ranks, someone meant to protect the very children who were now dying. Over the next 2 weeks, the situation worsened dramatically. 5 more children collapsed a total of 7 times, one of those incidents claiming the life of 9-week-old Becky Phillips. But the horror didn't end there. Concerned for Becky's twin sister, Katie, her parents brought her into the hospital as a precaution. In a horrifying twist of fate, Katie inexplicably stopped breathing twice. Though she was resuscitated, the damage was done. Katie would suffer from permanent brain damage. Beverly Allitt was again at the center of it all. She was often the first to arrive at the scene, always appearing to go above and beyond, leaving parents with the impression that she was a dedicated and compassionate nurse. In their eyes, she was an angel, present in the darkest moments, helping with the tragic cases that seemed to be overwhelming Ward 4. But the truth, once uncovered, would send shockwaves around the world. Ward 4 was no longer just a pediatric unit. It had become a stage for a series of sinister events. One such case was 5-month-old Paul Crampton. On April 12th, 16 days after his blood sample had been sent for analysis, the results came back and the news was anything but good. Over the next 2 weeks, the nightmare on Ward 4 continued to unfold. Another 10 children collapsed, and tragically, yet another life was lost. On April 22nd, 15-month-old Claire Peck, an asthmatic child, was admitted to Ward 4 with a severe attack. As doctors struggled to find a medical explanation for the series of collapses, the unsettling truth became harder to ignore. The killer was closer than anyone dared to imagine. It was time for the hospital authorities to contact the police. In a bid to find answers, Professor David Hull was brought in to produce an independent report based on the medical notes of 14 cases. His findings were unsettling. Only 3 of the cases raised concern, but one in particular, Paul Crampton's, stood out. The notes hinted at something far more sinister, something that could not be explained away by medical science alone. Meanwhile, Detective Stuart Clifton, trusting his instincts, sensed that something was deeply amiss and decided to dig deeper into the case. The police began their investigation with caution, interviewing hospital staff one by one, but instead of clarity, the fog of confusion only deepened. Among those questioned was a nurse who had been present at nearly all of the incidents, Beverly Allitt. Known for her history of deception, Allitt was a master at weaving lies, and this interview would be no different. The truth remained buried beneath her calm exterior, hidden from those who sought it. Outside the hospital, Detective Genene Jones was tasked with examining evidence related to the 13 children who had suffered. Samples were sent to Professor Vincent Marks at the University of Surrey, including one from Paul Crampton, which was to be tested again. The results from this second round of testing would crack the case wide open. The findings were alarming. Professor Marks discovered abnormalities not only in Paul Crampton's blood, but in several others as well. The evidence was mounting, pointing to a horrifying conclusion. A criminal was operating within the walls of Ward 4. The situation had escalated beyond the hospital's control, and swift action was now essential. Beverly Allitt had become the prime suspect. The police knew they had to act quickly to prevent further harm to the the children on Ward 4. At 7 a.m. on May 21, 1991, they moved in, arresting Allitt at her home on suspicion of stealing the key to the insulin fridge and attempting to murder Paul Crampton. Officer Billingsley and Detective Genene Jones escorted her to the police station for questioning, while other officers began searching her house. But the peculiar circumstances surrounding each attack made it difficult for the police to gather the concrete evidence they needed to keep her behind bars. Despite their suspicions, Allitt was released pending further investigation, a decision that allowed her cold-blooded behavior to continue unchecked. The arrest on May 21, 1991 had been a critical moment, but the lack of evidence meant she walked free, her position as a trusted nurse making the investigation even more challenging. As the world watched, the investigation pressed on. Yet, to the police's surprise, not all parents were convinced of Allitt's guilt. With mounting pressure, Allitt was placed on leave from her position at Ward 4, but she didn't disappear from the public eye. She moved in with her close friend Tracy Jobson and her family. It was here, while shopping one day, that Jonathan Jobson suddenly collapsed, later diagnosed with a hyperglycemic attack.
Jonathan collapses and he's taken into Peterborough Hospital, and it's later concluded that he'd had a hyperglycemic attack.
The coincidence was too great to ignore. Eileen Jobson's instincts told her something was terribly wrong. She couldn't shake the unease Allitt's presence brought into their home. Finally, she contacted the police, leading to Allitt's second arrest. Once again, Allitt's reaction was disturbingly calm, unsettling the investigators even further. Over the next 15 months, Beverly Allitt was held at Wakefield Prison as she awaited trial. On February 15, 1993, the trial of the Crown versus Beverly Gale Allitt began. Regardless of her plea, the prosecution's case was solid. Allitt was found guilty on all charges. She had been the common thread in every incident on Ward 4, present during each attack on the children, and she was there when Jonathan Jobson fell ill. The investigation into Allitt's past revealed a disturbing pattern of constant illnesses and fictitious injuries, clues that pointed to the motive behind her horrific crimes. Beverly Allitt had committed atrocities that shocked the nation. The nurse, once perceived as caring and gentle, had revealed herself as an angel of death. But the lingering question remained: what had driven this seemingly kind individual to murder innocent children? And that's the chilling story of Beverly Allitt, the angel of death. If you want more dark mysteries and untold stories, hit that subscribe button and join us here at Secret Sleuths. Don't forget to tap the bell so you never miss an episode. Thanks for watching and stay curious.